Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Checkpoint mayoral bus ride. We are starting at Hobsonville Point. We'll tell you more about our journey once we get going, but let's introduce you to our 5 candidates in alphabetical order. Vic Crone, come over Vic, welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Vic, tell the people of Auckland, and in fact the people of New Zealand, why Auckland should vote for you.
Absolutely. This election, your vote must count for change. I want to bring my experience across business, government, social sector and communities to move Auckland forwards. We need to rein in council spending, we've got to build a world-class transport network, and we've got to fast-track housing. Make your vote count for change this election. Vote Vic.
Thank you very much, Vic.
Thank you.
All aboard. Phil Goff, come over. Welcome, Phil. Nice to see you.
Thank you. G'day, John.
Why should the people of Auckland vote for you?
I think it's for a better Auckland. We've got big problems with congestion that we need to tackle now. We've got problems with housing unaffordability, people who can't afford to rent, people who will never buy in this city. And it's about an effective and efficient city, and it's about sustaining our environment. All of those things, I think. Please make sure you vote.
Thanks, Phil, and welcome.
Cheers.
Right, next up, John Paulino. I'm delighted you know alphabetical order. Thanks, John. Well, nice to have you out here. Why should the people of Auckland vote John Paulino for mayor?
Look, you know, Auckland has an amazing opportunity, and we need a mayor that's going to really take advantage of that opportunity. You know, we have such good growth, and we have population growth, and we need to actually have a mayor that's going to round people up, take advantage of that growth, and really do something with it. Do something that the people really love. That's what we need. Hello, New Zealand. Yes, vote John Paulino. And you know, you can look at my website, and I have a book that I've written and a little video clip that you can take a look and see how we're going to grow Auckland. Thank you. Vote John Paulino.
John Paulino on the bus. Chloe Swarbrick, welcome to Hobsonville Point.
Hello, John.
Nice to see you, Chloe. Why should the people of Auckland vote for you?
Well, this is your city and I will represent you. I will use every tool in Auckland Council's toolbox to build more homes. I will prioritise public transport, walking and cycling to see that we ease congestion off of our roads and grow sustainably. I believe in an Auckland that Aucklanders can love, and as your mayor, I will deliver.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you, John.
See you on board. And Mark Thomas.
Good morning.
Finally in alphabetical order, T for Thomas. Welcome to Hobsonville Point.
Thank you.
Why should the people of Auckland vote for you?
We've been trying to make Auckland the world's most livable city in the last 6 years, but it's become much less livable for too many people. Traffic congestion, house prices. I want to deliver an Auckland that works. I've had 6 years as part of council and more than 20 years running large businesses. It's that combination, I think, can deliver an Auckland that can work much better for all of us if you elect Mark Thomas, your next mayor.
Thank you, Mark. On the bus. Mark Thomas getting on the bus. So that's it. There are our 5 candidates. We are about to be driven by Mac, our driver, who you will meet, into town. We will start talking the issues that we think are going to be really important in this election. We will be back with our discussion, a long one, lots of issues, after 6.
I'm not sure whether it's going to work, but we'll see.
Yeah. It's going to be magnificent. It's 7:32 a.m. and Mac, our bus driver, is pulling out into the ordered and orderly lanes of Hobsonville Point. We're driving into the city via the Northwestern Motorway. No bus lane yet, by the way, although a chunk of the motorway is down to get one. And we're leaving what's being called a prototype, a suburb of the future. So what do our mayoral candidates think of it? Vic Crone.
I think what I like about this development is that it was well planned. It's a well planned community, whereas some other areas across Auckland, basically houses are just popping up without anything else. So obviously there's more work to do here in terms of getting public transport here, in terms of buses and the Northwestern Busway, and also actually with ferries. But overall it's pretty well planned. I think, yes, it's been a success. I guess the concern I have, which actually isn't Hobsonville Point's problem, is the price of housing is still really, really high, so it's not affordable housing. So in terms of my 10-point plan for housing, that's what needs to be addressed. Land prices, consenting faster, and we've got to build a better mix of affordable homes.
How do we do that?
Well, by sending a very clear signal to the market of the types of homes that we need. Now, the unitary plan does do that in terms of more apartments, a more dense living.
But the market goes where profit is, right?
Yeah, that's why you've got to release the MUL, the urban limit. You've got to do that to make land available. You know, the biggest cost in a house is the land.
John Paulino, how do we get more people into homes they own?
Well, we do need to build more affordable homes, and it's impossible to do that inside the metropolitan urban boundary. You have to open up the boundary, but you can't just open up the boundary because then the land price will just skyrocket. So what we need to do is we actually need to acquire that land, put the infrastructure in there.
When you say we, who?
All council, yes. We need to acquire that land so that we're acquiring it at that discounted price before the infrastructure goes in there and before the rezoning. Because once you do that, once you open it up, it's automatically going to skyrocket in price, and then we're not able to build affordable housing. You know, you could buy a house somewhere in New Zealand for under $300,000, a brand new house, and what's the difference? The difference is the land price. So the only way we can make affordable housing is by acquiring land at a cheaper price.
Mark Thomas, how do you persuade somebody who is a school teacher, for example, who will earn the same money teaching in Invercargill that they earn in Auckland, that Auckland is a place that they have any kind of future in if they want to own their own home?
Sure, by having realistic and credible plans to build more affordable housing quicker.
So what are realistic and credible plans to do that?
Well, they're the plans actually that we've developed on council for the last 6 years but haven't made enough progress on. So we own significant land in the likes of Manukau, Henderson, Onehunga, Takapuna. Of course, you heard the Northcote development recently. We haven't made enough progress with building affordable housing, and actually it's not about the land price in those areas. It's about getting scale more quickly. We could have built apartments and townhouses in those locations actually under the old rules. The unitary plan's not a panacea. We're just not spending enough money on the infrastructure because we're spending it on more wasteful projects, and we're not quick enough with consents, and those are my key areas of focus.
Chloe Swarbrick is 22. In fact, she joked in Vice that her friends think her name is Chloe Swarbrick, 22. But at half the age of the next youngest candidate on the bus, she's on the outside of Auckland's property market, and that fact is material. How many of your friends own their own homes?
None.
And how many of your friends have a realistic possibility of owning their own homes in the next 10 years?
In the current climate, it's just not going to happen.
So,
interestingly, there's actually been statistics released recently that show that my generation saves more than previous generations, but coming into this market, especially with the likes of our student loans, because there is that convention around going to university, but the opportunity isn't quite here. There's just a plethora of issues that are currently keeping us out of this housing market.
So how do you get into the housing?
Well, we need affordable housing more than anything else. But I also think that there's quite an issue in focusing on first home buying. I think that what we really also need to be looking at doing is looking at making rent affordable, and rent actually also a plausible thing. And the way that we can go about doing that is that by increasing the power that renters have, whether that be security of tenure. Obviously, we need to reduce the costs of renting. Right now in Auckland, the average rental price for a 3-bedroom home, and those are the only places that you can get stats on from Barfoot and Thompson in June, is $509. The take-home wage on minimum wage for a 40-hour work week is $513. That leaves you with $4 left over, and again, not all too much livability.
Phil Goff, how old were you when you bought your first house?
A little bit older than Chloe, probably I think about 24, 25, and in those days, the first house I bought was 2.5 times my salary as a university teacher. My kids are probably paying 5 or 6 times that amount, and going onto the market for the first time, you know, the precise figure, 9.7 times the household income, not the individual's income. So that means really the Kiwi dream of owning your own home has been lost for a wide cross-section of Aucklanders as first home buyers.
Why? How did that happen?
I think it happened because growth in population has accelerated faster than the provision of housing, and when demand exceeds supply, the price goes up. And at the moment, we're growing by 45,000 people a year.
Are you troubled by that? Is that too many?
I think it's too many given the inadequacy of the response on the housing market.
You do think it's too many?
Yeah, unless you can get the level of house building up to match the increase in demand, you're going to have housing unaffordability to the extent that we are the 4th least unaffordable city in the world. That's not a title we sought.
So I'm going to come back to you and talk about housing. Can I have a show of hands? Have we got a wide shot? So thank you, Claire. Can I have a show of hands? Who thinks 45,000 immigrants a year into Auckland is sustainable? Well, so you're content with immigration numbers as they stand. Mark Thomas, Vic Crone and John Polino are putting their hands up.
John,
I think
there's
you
a
need
lot
to-
of variables in there.
so
So
who do you
he's
cut, John?
qualified.
I mean, that's the question, right? Who's Phil going to cut, right? Because actually growth's an opportunity, right? So what we haven't done is manage growth well.
So this is Mark Thomas speaking, if you're listening on the radio.
And so we haven't actually put the infrastructure in, we haven't planned as well as we should have. And so rather than sort of cut migration, which actually adds to Auckland's diversity, it's a real opportunity for us. It's actually part of what makes us attractive. What I want to do is make sure we're doing a better job responding to that growth with the affordable housing and the transport planning.
But look, I think you have to qualify that. 45,000 might not be too much if you were prepared to put the infrastructure in place to cope with that. If you were building the houses, building the public transport systems, you'd get away with that. But we're not doing those things. Therefore, we're becoming more congested and less affordable.
That's a fair point, isn't it, Vic Crone?
Yeah, well, I don't think you can blame decades and decades of underinvestment on immigration right now. We haven't been investing in Auckland in transport, housing or water, the state of our water network actually, for a long time now, and that has caught up with us.
So it's time to make up for that?
We absolutely have to make up for that, and we have to get on the front
How do we
foot.
pay for it? John Polino, I'll come to you in a moment, but Vic Crone, how do we pay for it? If there's a $4 billion shortfall already in the ATAP plans, how do we pay for the kind of investment you're talking
So first
about?
of all, you start with what you're spending yourself, and so I'm going to target at least $500 million of inefficient spending and put that into transport initiatives. There's the $1 billion infrastructure fund from the government.
So
I'm sure we'll get. I actually
So you're
believe
gonna
that we'll
target
get it.
spending?
Absolutely.
Give me an example
And
where
then,
you can cut. Give me an example.
in regards to AT, there is money in there. Absolutely, we can have duplication
much?
of resources across the board. As I've said, there's at least $500 million. There's about 10 areas, and we're not going to have time to go through them. The next thing is actually public-private partnerships. That's what Sydney and Melbourne do. Australia has a PPP pipeline of 66 billion. Ours is 2.5 billion. So that's the next place. And then, of course, you've got bonds that you can look at too. There are a range of ways we can solve not just that gap, but find more money to build the infrastructure Auckland desperately needs.
Okay, John Polino?
Look, we have, undeveloped land is 20 times cheaper than inside the metropolitan urban boundary. So if we open up the metropolitan urban boundary, as a council, we acquire that land, we put the infrastructure in there, and then we're able to actually save the areas that we need for schools, parks, playgrounds, sports fields and all. We sell it off to the developers and recoup all the money that we spent on that infrastructure.
Okay, sorry, because this is a nightmare for our wonderful camerawoman Claire. But Mac, our driver, where are we, Mac, now?
Just past the Lincoln Road interchange.
And the time is 7:44. And how fast are you going, Mac?
15 kilometres an hour.
Right, so at 7:44 we're going 15 kilometres an hour, and sometimes, in fact, the traffic is almost stationary. So this, Chloe Swarbrick, is what we have to address. There is not a full bus lane on the Northwestern Motorway.
Absolutely.
So we say to people, use public transport. Why the hell would you?
Well, we need to ensure that we have those actual bus lanes that are congestion free. When we have that public transport that actually works, people use it because it's more efficient than sitting in traffic. What we have right now is it is more attractive to sit in your car, and the way that Auckland's grown for the past few decades has fostered that auto dependency because people can't get from A to B to C using our public transport. So it's the rapid transit network, but one of the major problems and roadblocks we have there is that that's projected to finish in 2046. That's 30 years away. Far too far away.
So where's the money come from to speed it up?
So this actually also comes back to talking about development and all of the infrastructure that we as Auckland need. It's not an attractive proposition, but what we really need is more funding from central government. In the OECD, the average amount of spending that comes from government coffers at a local level is 30%. In New Zealand, we are less than half of that at 11%. So we have a big problem whereby Auckland is dealing with all of the issues of growth, and central government is seeing
somebody
a
else's problem.
Okay, hold on a sec. I know I want to come because you've been in central government, so I'm going to come back to you on this one. But Mark Thomas,
look, this is the classic refrain from the left, and it's nice that we've got the two candidates from the left on my left. It's someone else's problem, actually. What we've got to do is take more responsibility for ourselves. We have a $42 billion balance sheet. Almost $4 billion of revenue comes from Aucklanders every year. There's more we can do. And I suppose
what is it? When you say there's more we can do, what specifically?
Replace the $110 million that Len Brown cut from the transport budget, and that's by rewriting the Auckland plan, taking our 13 strategic priorities down to a narrower number. Transport's only one of those 13 priorities. Guess why we're stuck in traffic? Yeah. We're not spending enough for the money we get. And then we use that to leverage actually private sector opportunities. I'm the only candidate who's been directly involved with public-private partnerships, and we use that as is an opportunity to make it easier for more revenue from the private sector. So
Hey,
that's
John,
the
that
opportunity
is
that we
unadulterated
have.
rubbish.
Yeah,
That is
so-
absolutely
Well,
unadulterated rubbish.
Phil's never done that, so he knows nothing about it.
People are listening to this on the radio.
It's
So
really
that was
important,
Mark
yeah.
Thomas. This is
Oh,
forgot.
yeah, that is total rubbish. This is a state highway. This has always been funded 100% by government. When we put the busway in on the North Shore, that worked. Half of the people from the North Shore come by busway. I don't know what Mark's talking about, this being the council's responsibility. This is a road of national significance.
I'm happy to help.
And I have a-
It's
I have a-
I'm happy to help.
designated-
Okay, Mark.
It's designated
So
a state highway. The
Phil
government
had
pays
spoken to
100%.
NZTA, he'd know as I do that actually we've been holding back their investment actually. So Amity, which is the busway from Pakuranga to Panmure, actually that would be underway now if we hadn't been holding it back. So although NZTA is the principal funder, actually we do the tributaries, right? There's a lot of additional funding that we do. And when Phil's government did the Northern Busway, they never put light rail in. So he's criticising the current government now. Actually, look back at what you did. You never
Do you
put light
wish light
rail
rail
on the
had
North
gone
Shore,
in there?
Phil.
No,
hindsight?
because the busway on the North Shore, if Mark does talk to Auckland Transport...
You're a light
I was
rail
talking-
fan now.
I was talking to them yesterday. There will be light rail,
When?
probably from about... on the North Shore busway, probably by 2030 when that is bus congested. But we are already bus congested on Simon Street, Queen Street, Dominion Road. That's why we need the light rail
that we
as soon as possible.
How are you going to pay for
Okay,
it?
Vic Crone.
So I just want to say this is great traffic. So a year ago, seriously, a year ago, this backup would have been way back to Westgate, if not further up into Riverhead. So there has been progress on the motorway, and so therefore we've got a bit lower congestion. So for me, the point is we need the Northwestern.
So this is
It's-
great. This is progress.
Compared to
Oh, wait,
no,
wait,
it is.
no, wait a
No, I'm
second.
serious. I am serious compared to a year ago.
Because it's tempting
Yeah.
to be cynical about the fact
Yeah,
that
no,
actually we could get out and jog faster.
Well, I
than
said
this
to
bus is
I said
going.
to I
quite a
said
good
to John.
cycleway, actually.
So a year ago,
Yeah, there is.
Because by the way, I have a place out there, so I know this road. A year ago, it's congested back up there. Now it's going to congest back up there again within one year anyway. So, but the point is that we do need the Northwestern, but it can't stop here. It's got to go through to Riverhead, Kumeu, because there's a lot of development
So
out
who's
there.
going to pay for that?
So the council and the government through the ATAP plan have come together and said it's a priority. What I've said
So
is that we can't take 2 decades for the
That's right,
Northwestern
because,
busway.
boy,
so
priorities are relative term,
That's
isn't
right.
it?
So we can't take 2 decades. So we need to find funding. And as I said before, the way we do it is spending our own coffers better. Is actually getting $1 billion out of the government, if not more. And then we look to public-private partnerships to fill more of the gap.
Okay.
So that's
John
how we
Bellino-
bring it forward.
John Bellino, sorry, I'm going to come
Yeah.
to you, John Bellino,
Okay.
next. Right. I want a show of hands from anyone who believes there is a substantive amount of money to be realised from asset sales, the assets that Auckland owns. Does anyone believe they should be sold to pay for the kind of infrastructure spending we're talking
I
about?
agree with the 2 considered reports we had that said we can swap assets actually. We can move from one asset class to another.
So
we
you're
still
talking.
own it.
So you can't swap assets. So
You
you're
absolutely can
you're
swap
gonna-
assets.
You're talking about selling
I'm
assets
talking
and
about
buying other
swapping.
ones.
I'm talking about
assets.
asking Aucklanders to. They'd have to vote on it.
So what would
asking
so
them
what would
to
you swap
agree.
out of, Mark Thomas? Mark Thomas would seek approval from ratepayers, but he's thinking half the city shares in Auckland Airport and all the city shares in the port operating company, but not the port land. All proceeds tied to specific infrastructure. Phil Goff wants a form of road charge, a user pays system effectively, and he and Chloe Swarbrick want more from the government. More on that coming up too. But Mark Thomas is alone in talking asset sales. Does anyone else agree with that?
No.
No.
Right, you're on your own there, Mark Thomas. Not that that's a bad thing. It's nice to have a niche. But, okay, Vic Crone, you don't agree with rationalising assets, Auckland assets?
No, I don't. No, I think we need to be more
Okay.
innovative rather than just selling things. And also, do you know what? Our debt is going up phenomenally, and I think we do need to save for a rainy day.
Okay, John Paulino.
Look, we're talking about the congestion here. We've got to remember, first of all, that only 12% of the working force actually works in the CBD. And this is the reason why everybody's using their cars, because they're not going into the same direction. And public transportation is very difficult to get people into a spider web, because Auckland's growing like a spider web. People live like out in all these different suburbs.
We are now stopped. We've stopped on the motorway.
Yeah.
Heading towards
most
the
of these
CBD.
people are not going to the CBD. The majority of these cars are not going to the CBD, and that's why we're struggling with transportation, and that's why we have to change the way we're growing.
I just want to address the disdain that we're all obviously currently feeling about going to central government for more money. This is an international yardstick. World-class cities get serious funding from their parliament, from their central governments. So it's a yardstick. The precedent is set. It's not crazy, and it's best practice overseas.
Do you think that Auckland has been well served by central government, Chloe?
No, absolutely not.
Phil Goff, do you, having been a Labour cabinet minister and in fact leader of the opposition, think that Auckland has been well served by central government?
It hasn't over a large period of time, but let me say a few things that I think were good initiatives in the last government I served in. I've mentioned the North Shore Busway, but we also double-tracked the railway out to West Auckland. We started the process of electrification. They were important things to do.
Okay.
Actually, can I just quickly cover
just
that?
one thing, because Phil raised rail, I think, for the first time. What do you want to do about getting rail to the airport? Are you serious about that? Now, obviously,
Yeah,
ATAP is
absolutely.
already discussing this, and lots of these things ATAP has already covered, but we're talking 10, 20, 30 years, right?
20
And
years.
it can't
20
be.
years.
It can't be that long. You could get that done probably in 7 to 8 years,
How would you
according
pay
to
for
the
it?
transport
How would you pay for
experts. Well, if you're doing light rail, one of the options there is to look at a public-private partnership. Another option, of course, is to regard light rail just the same way that the construction of this motorway is 100% because it's a road of national significance. Why wouldn't you regard light rail in the same way?
Okay. Vic Crone, are you light rail or heavy rail? Can I get some clarity around that out to the airport?
The airport, for me, if there is a choice, it's heavy. We can't afford to build a brand new rail network into the city. And why is that? Because the cost of light rail, once it's completed in 2046, is around $12 to $15 billion. Now, where the heck are we going to get that sort of funding from? And I'm not hearing anything from the left-hand side of the bus on how they're going to pay for a significant light rail network, not just in the city, but out to the airport, out east, out west, and
how
up
would you
north.
pay for heavy rail? So you're talking about the continuation of the line that currently goes to Onehunga?
And that's where you can bring in public-private partnerships.
Manukau.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Can, because
absolutely.
that's what Brisbane did, actually.
Yeah.
So Brisbane, in fact, solved this problem. Rapid transit's the way to think about it, right? Let's be agnostic about
I'm
the
glad
mode.
they talk
Heavy
about
rail
Brisbane.
or light rail, mate?
Well, let's be agnostic about the mode. When you're facing $2 billion options for both of those, because that's the fully loaded cost for the heavy rail extension and for a full light rail, I want to be deeply agnostic about committing to that until we've looked at whether there's a smart bus technology, which is exactly that's the work that's currently underway.
It's gotta be
so
heavy
the
rail.
the issue with Phil is he opposed public-private partnerships most of the time that he was in government. So he's
No,
kind of got no
that's not true.
He's got no
I
credibility.
did oppose
in this space.
privatisation of
And
prisons,
there's
if that's
no
what you
point.
mean.
There's no point
And I stand by that,
talking
and I'll
about
be proven
something
right.
that you've got no credibility delivering, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
John Polino.
It has to be heavy rail. I'll tell you why. If, by building that satellite city in South Auckland, we can get the train up and running again from Hamilton. That means someone could buy a really cheap house down in Huntley, train to work, because it's all about creating work hubs so that people live, work, and play. They gotta live close to where they work. So if you do heavy rail from, say, Manukau to the airport, that means all the way from Hamilton you can get to the airport, and then eventually when we connect Auckland to Albany, we can go all the way up to Whangarei.
I just want to make a point here. If you look around us on the bus right now, they are almost all single people driving cars. That's the problem that we have in Auckland here.
90%.
And the 2013 census.
So we have a camera out the front, and I think that people who don't live in Auckland will just think this is bizarre. Why the hell would you live in this city?
Because
Why
Why
don't
do I live in Auckland?
Yeah.
Because I grew up here. And I mean, interestingly, it's my friends who are the people who are leaving in the brain drain because there isn't the opportunity here. Although I see the absence of something as an opportunity. So I am seeking to really build something here in Auckland because we have so much talent that unfortunately right now kind of lives underground because it's not being given the resources it needs to thrive.
Now, we know that ATAP is going to give this motorway a bus lane when by?
No, Te Atiatu to
2
Westgate. It's
decades.
only a partial bus lane. It's only in the next 10 years. It's not enough.
completed
It's
in
not
2
the full-
decades.
John, where is it
In
going
the
to go
first
to?
10 years.
Te Atiatu to Westgate.
But it should have been
It's not.
done when we did the extension on this motorway. We're on a brand new piece of motorway. It wouldn't have cost much more to put a busway on the side. Where was the planning? Where was the foresight? We need to be thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead. These guys weren't thinking 2 years
Absolutely, but we also we have to think, what's the root of the problem? And the root of the problem right now is that only 12% of the working force works in the city. And when you keep intensifying suburbs, you got people going from locations that are difficult to get transport to and going to work in locations that is difficult to get transport to.
John, the problem with Phil's side...
One question, Mark Thomas. Before we come to you, I do want to ask you, Are you seriously running for mayor?
I'm seriously running for mayor and making everyone aware that Phil Goff is likely to be the mayor unless they realise he's not got the credibility or the plans.
Okay,
That's our problem.
Oh, no, yeah, no, it's because before when we were about to get in the bus, we were getting coffees in the little cafe out at Hobsonville Point, and 2 customers came in, and you were across to them like a greyhound after a rabbit, giving them your pamphlet.
That's right.
And I thought, hold on a sec, I sort of thought you'd pulled out at some strange level.
What I did, John, was I told the truth, and I know you're not used to politicians necessarily saying that, that it's likely that if we don't make a different choice, Phil Goff will lead us really down the same journey that we've had with Len Brown, not making enough progress. There's a big opportunity here. We just need to be able to apply more knowledge, I think, of what the challenges are and bring in more external experience rather than, as he continually does, blame the government.
But it started when, after Auckland Council, Auckland Transport and NZTA had spent 2 years on planning a transport strategy, they put it up and central government said, no, I don't like this. Well, the minister said, I don't like this, go back to the drawing board. Now, we should have had ATAP right from the start. You know, it is always going to be jointly funded. That's the nature of transport. You know, a local road is 50% central, 50% local financed. A road of national significance, 100% central government financed. You have to have the two working together, and both central government and local government share the same constituency here. And our constituency is saying we need a better deal to stop traffic congestion such as we've got now, leading to gridlock, and we are practically gridlocked on this road this morning.
Okay, the City Rail Link is an example, a really good example of...
5 years after it was put up, the government has come to the party and agreed to do it. And I wonder why we couldn't have had that planning, both bodies together right from the start. Then we'd be getting a City Rail Link in 2018, not 2023.
Chloe, what is the thing you would most like to achieve as mayor?
So the major thing would be, well, there's 2 major things, so you can't really extricate them either. Housing and transport are the 2 biggest problems facing Auckland. So using all of the tools in Auckland Council's toolbox to ensure that we get the supply that Auckland needs for housing and affordable housing in particular, but also transport. So really making sure that the rapid transit network comes to fruition earlier than it is currently projected for. Because right now we do have a problem whereby in order to use public transport to get anywhere, you're usually having to give yourself at least 2 hours leeway. The whole premise of the rapid transit network is that you can turn up at any time to one of the stops and get on a bus or a train within 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, Vic Rohn, what do you think would be something that would make a material difference to lives of Aucklanders? We've talked about housing already. What else?
Well, I think there's 2 things that I would like to achieve as mayor. The first is a more inclusive city. There's so many Aucklanders who don't feel part of it. Whether you're living in Franklin, Rodney or Waiheke, whether you're young or old, actually many people don't feel part of it. So how do we actually broaden the infrastructure to a much wider range of Aucklanders so they're within reach of that? And the second one is, how do we stand up a council that is passionate about the community of Auckland and working with the community to solve our problems? And I think we have a real problem. 15% of Aucklanders are satisfied with council. That's a big gulf, and the next mayor has to play a huge role in bringing the community and Aucklanders back together and making Auckland Council want to work and love working with the communities right across Auckland.
John, can I actually ask a question? If we're talking about engagement and accessibility and people feeling impassioned to vote, who here supports change to STV?
We need a voting system that's more responsive. I completely agree. I think this old-fashioned way of voting is also something that turns younger people off particularly. I mean, what we've got to get is electronic voting up. And I'm sorry that the government wasn't able to actually make a fist of that. We know there can be problems, but it also works. And I think that's a key way to get people more engaged.
John, can we touch on what we were just talking about recently about what Auckland needs? You know, Auckland needs to be looked at as a region, not as a super city, because when you're looking at it as a super city, you're creating Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is bankrupt. It takes 3 hours to get to work in the morning and 3 hours to get home, and we need to change that. So we need to grow differently. We need to grow so that people are actually living and working in the same areas. And if we don't do that, the congestion is going to get worse and worse.
And playing.
I'm sorry.
And playing. Live, work, and play.
Well, no, I mean, that's a good point, isn't it? Work and play.
Yeah,
So ideally, there would be less congestion if people lived nearer their jobs.
Of course, and I mean, it's not a good life to actually travel an hour and a half. You know, we're socially changing all of Auckland. You got families that parents are going to work early in the morning, so they're not getting their kids up and getting to school. They're coming home late at night and they're not spending time with their kids. So they're actually you're taking away 3 hours of their life with their children. And then you got grandparents that are moving out of Auckland because they can't afford to live here anymore, not spending time with the grandkids. We're changing Auckland socially, and we need to fix that.
That's what the 10 metro centres, of course, part of the unitary plan that we've been working on for 4 years, is designed to do, to actually create these hubs where
But it's
people
not
live
happening.
and where they work. And actually, it's already happening in parts of Auckland, but it's not happening quickly enough.
It hasn't worked in 5 years. We got congestion that's worse and worse. ATAP is saying that in 10 years, if we don't change the way we're growing, congestion is going to come to a stop. Well, we're already at a stop right now.
Well, literally, almost.
Yeah.
How fast are we going, Mac?
5.
About 5.
Yeah.
5 kilometres an hour. And
In
in
between
fact,
stops.
I would go as far as to say that we are from time to time
Stop.
stationary.
And if your camera looks out the window now,
We've in fact got a GoPro
you've
out
got
the front,
tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on that infrastructure. What's it going to cost now that you've put that in place to add a busway afterwards? Can you believe the short-sightedness of the planning decision that spent all of that money and didn't put a busway on?
For
This is
decades,
blaming
we've
the
spent
government again.
billions
Chloe.
and billions and billions of dollars on infrastructure, on transport, and that has not been reflected in choice.
John,
And
can I-
so the ATAB response doesn't put a bus lane here, does it? So the people.
Yes, no, there will be a busway added now.
Te
after
Atu to
the
Westgate,
event.
a
Yeah,
partial
But
bus.
again, it's not the
It's
route.
But we're
It's
at
a
Port Chief,
retrofit.
so it won't be here, will
No,
it?
it won't.
So it won't be here. So it stops at Te Atu, doesn't it?
From Te Atu to Westgate, that's the principal area
Exactly.
of focus.
So
But
we're-
ultimately, it will be right the way through.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? How do you retrofit when you've got that sort of skyline out there and you've got the flyovers? It should have been built in as part of the initial planning.
True.
I'm not blaming
But-
local government, central government. I'm saying that's a failure of planning, and we can't keep on doing that as we've been doing
well,
actually for decades.
right,
Phil, why didn't you put light rail in when you did the Northern Busway? If your criticism is that the government didn't plan
There's an easy
ahead,
answer
why
to
didn't you do
Mark,
that?
If you'd like to listen to it. The easy answer is the busway at the moment is working perfectly fine. It will work perfectly fine
it needs
until
more
you've
parking.
got the population growth on the shore that brings bus congestion, which will happen about 2030, and at that point you will need light rail.
And that's the issue, right? It's about future planning for future grgrowth, and that's the reason why he
Yeah,
didn't
and-
put light rail
yeah,
in.
and the good thing
that's
about a
the reason why the
busway is that
busway
you
didn't
can
initially
then
go
put
in.
a
but
light
now it's
rail
planned
on a
to.
busway.
But-
So the two are quite compatible,
What
and that's what we should be doing around
What
the city.
about future planning where we actually get people out of their car and not even have to use public transportation?
John,
You build
how
it-
many people
Maybe
is
they
that
could
gonna
fly.
affect?
That's going to affect a lot of people because if we build up Albany and we create another city in Albany where people live, work, and play, we can put 50,000 people there.
Okay, so that's
and 50,000 jobs.
people, but there's
Well, that's 50,000 cars.
Little
in
battery
Auckland.
packs on their
And
back.
how long might that take?
Flying
Crone.
around.
Oh, you
Vic
have to do
Crone.
both.
Vic
Yes.
Crone,
Have to do
sorry.
both.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vic Crone is going to speak. This
We're moving again now. This is exciting.
I'll tell you what, though, we've been going for a wee while and we just heard our first road rage.
Yeah, we did. That's right. It's
It's
exciting.
not bad.
We're very patient here in Auckland.
Look, I think there's a couple of things that I want to contribute at the moment, and that is number one, when you look at the light rail business case, you know, they didn't even take into account affordability or the future of technology and how that's going to change our public transport network. And so that's the big bear I have. So these so-called experts didn't take into account two of the most important things for the next 30 years. How much is it going to cost and what's it going to look like in terms of technology? Now, we've had a conversation here around one person in a car. Why are we not letting rip things like carpooling, car sharing apps to get, 3, 4, 5 people per car instead of one?
That's a good one. They're
That's
not all
what
going to the same place.
well, but do you know what the
well, that
brilliant
too.
thing is, John, is that
Get
you
over
can
that problem.
you can enter your A to B destination, and computers these days can work out who is around you and who is close to you going from A to B. And that's the smartness that we need to bring into our city, not just looking to the traditional way of spending billions of dollars on public transport when we actually can get cars
You know-
off
Right,
the
hold on
road.
one sec. I want a show of hands, and it has to be honest, from people on this bus, and I will include myself in this, in good faith, who regularly use public transport. Put your hand up. regularly, Mark Thomas?
I do. I city link from my office at the bottom of Queen Street to the town hall
Okay.
3 or 4 times a week.
And John Polino didn't put his hand up.
Nope.
John Campbell didn't put his hand up. Vic, you didn't put your hand up. And Phil Goff, you
And
didn't.
I'm 10 or 12 kilometres away from the nearest bus or rail stations. I don't have the option even.
So as we spread, what do we do about people who live on the outskirts? Are they simply going to clog up the motorways?
No, I think what you do with a good public transport system is you make a convenient alternative available for those who can use it. For those that can't, and there'll always be people who can't, that at least decongests the motorway. When I lived in Papatoetoe and a kilometre away from the railway station, I regularly went into town by train. I can't do that now. But if people who are able to do it, that takes the pressure off the roadway and makes it better for the people that have to use their car.
John, you know how
Chloe
we do it?
Swarbrick, Chloe Swarbrick, how do you find the public transport system?
Absolutely dismal. Again, it's not convenient. It's often run down, particularly in South Auckland. A lot of the buses are extremely old. So yeah, it's nowhere near up to standard. And again, we need to see serious investment in it, because that is seriously the only thing that will get people out of their cars.
Vic Crone, if you don't become mayor, do you have ambitions to go into central politics?
No.
Cross your heart and hope to die?
Yeah. Yes. I went into local because I believe that's where the skills shortage is. It's in local government. Actually, we have some pretty good talent in central government and actually in our central government departments. Local government spending $60 billion over a 10-year period, you know, that's a big shift in what we used to have. And we haven't changed out the capability of our politicians to govern that. And that's what I'm passionate about.
Okay. Chloe Swarbrick, can I ask you the same question? If you don't become mayor, do you have ambitions to go into central government politics?
No, I do not. And again, it's because I believe that local government is where you can affect real change in communities actually quite quickly. I love the fact that it's boots on the ground. I really want to combat the fact right now that obviously council satisfaction is sitting at 15%. The majority of Aucklanders don't know what Auckland Council does, let alone have any connection with their local boards. So there's a number of issues that we really need to address in local government.
Now, as Chloe was saying that, most of our listeners, most of the people will be hearing you, but we actually, anyone watching this. Yeah. So Chloe,
we went through a tunnel.
Chloe went into the dark, literally, not metaphorically, which means we've arrived in town. And John Polino's point is a good one, that actually the vast majority of the cars we were with have not taken the Nelson Street off-ramp, so they were going somewhere else.
That's right, and that's the root of the problem. And we need to fix the root of the problem, not just keep putting Band-Aids on what we think the problem is.
So how do you fix that?
You got to get people living closer to where they work. You have to actually create nodes so that more people work in one location, so that it's not a big spider web.
Okay. Mark Thomas, how do we fix this?
Well, that's the Metro Centre plan. So actually having Westgate, the Westgates of this world, having them actually become more economically independent, that's already part of the plan.
There's more to life than shopping malls, though, isn't there? I mean, really and truly.
But this is my point.
We keep talking about Auckland being one of the most livable cities in the world. Are we just going to build shopping malls?
Yeah. So what we've got is just the malls, and that's, of course, the criticism. But actually, those malls are the precursor to the huge housing boom that'll happen there, and there'll be more public transport. So I'm saying
what about the quality of life stuff? What about parks? What about
roads?
What about cycleways?
Have you not read the unitary plan?
I absolutely have read it, but who's going to pay for it? Who's going to build it? When's it going to happen?
So it's as it always is, a combination of developers, particularly, right, leading that funding, supplemented by council, and we actually have to pay for more of some of that civic infrastructure now because of the changes the government's made. But we can't keep limiting ourselves. You know, hardly any of these developments have the developers paying for private water. Actually, that's possible, right? So we need to make it easier where it's economically sensible for private developers to pay for more of that infrastructure rather than continuing to burden the ratepayer.
You know who's designing our future? Developers. Isn't that great? We don't have planners actually designing our future. We have developers designing our future. That really works, doesn't it? That's why we're in this trouble. I mean, what do you call, Mark, what do you call...
Phil Goff, respond to that.
Yeah, look, if you look at Hobsonville Point, where we started this journey, that was a partnership between central government with some local government involvement and the private developers. And I think you've produced an excellent result.
We are coming off the motorway at Nelson Street, and Chloe, we are about to go past, and people live in these places, and I don't want to be rude about them, but we are about to go past a number of examples of really poor building.
Yeah, density
They're
done awfully.
I mean, density done awfully. So if the developers, as John Polino puts it, are building our future, how do we get them to build it better than this?
Well, we set the standards, basically. And interestingly enough, I've lived in apartments like this in the central city, which are awful. So we basically just need to set the standard. And that's why, for me, one of the major things about streamlining the consenting process is not stripping back the red tape per se, but it's making it easier from a consumer perspective to have those consents processed.
Can I tell you how it's fair to say that those buildings were put up before we were using urban design panels. Urban design panels, the urban design manual, are part of what the city can do to make sure we're not just building high-rise ghettos.
But John, right in the heart of Britomart, we'll
Thomas.
shortly finish, right? There's a display there of the sorts of developments that are underway now, right? The new design shapes, actually mixing old and new. So this is not about knocking down everything that's old. It's about actually adding new developments that work and that do a much better job than the ones we've just driven past.
Sorry, John.
Sorry,
Vic Groan, you're sitting there with extraordinary kind of transcendent.
Well, no, I'm just thinking.
Yeah. Just wondering. And did you have a coffee?
No. Do you know what?
Have you hit the wall?
No, not at all. I'm actually very reflective. The thing that I find sad about the apartment buildings here is that's what has set the standard for Auckland, and that's why Aucklanders are so against intensification, because they saw the early development of apartments and went, I don't want that anywhere near me. So it's really sad that this has set the standard for it.
And there are some new buildings going up here that look fantastic.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
some of the building around Hobson Street and Nelson Street contaminated people's attitudes.
They absolutely did, and there's actually some beautiful apartment buildings coming up over Auckland. You know, Ockham and Wilkington Road have a really lovely 3-storey apartment building. Now that's the sort of quality we want. They are a fabulous developer.
What's an apartment in that building going to cost, Vic?
Well, actually, it's 65% the cost of a house. It is more affordable. It has more green space because you remove the car garages and the parking goes underneath, and it's more community. So actually, it's really sad that Auckland don't understand the concept of apartment living that we could have here is really enjoyable. It is more greener, and it is attractive, and it doesn't need to look like what these look like.
Right, we're in town. We are on the corner of Nelson and Victoria Street.
West, yeah.
So we're right beside TVNZ, really bang in the CBD. Queen Street is a couple of blocks that way. And I'm exhausted. And
I'm just getting going.
And one of the things, you know, we're often cynical about politicians, but I think, you know, wanting to be mayor and giving it your energy and your enthusiasm should be welcomed, because otherwise we're in real trouble if people won't stand for office. Chloe, why are you standing?
Well, I entered late into this race. I entered actually on the 4th of July, no significance there. But the reason for that is because I had been waiting for somebody to stand up and have a vision that inspired me. And having lived in Auckland my whole life and seeing all of my friends living here, I'm of the generation who's currently experiencing all of these problems that we're talking about. We can talk about housing and affordability. I have a $43,000 student loan. I'm not going to be able to afford a home in this market, nor an apartment. Transport, I rely on public transport to get from A to B, and my friends are the people who are leaving in this brain drain. And nobody was saying anything that inspired me. There wasn't the vision that needed to happen coming out of any of these people. And I was working as a journalist, interviewing them as well.
Phil Goff, I would ask you the same question. Let's end on this question and we'll go clockwise round. Why are you standing, having been in politics so long, having commuted between Auckland and Wellington, having with all the strings attached, you know, the criticism, the abuse, the rigour, the long hours?
There's an old saying, if you don't want to be criticised, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. I want to make a difference, and I want to make a difference in the city that I've lived in all my life. This is a great city. It's a stunning environment. It's got enormous potential, choice and opportunity, inclusive city,
hold on a
innovative
second. Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt, but you say it's a great city and you say it's got potential. And the secret is, I think, it's not as great as it could be or it should be, right? And does everyone feel that way?
Absolutely.
We want a better Auckland. That slogan rings a bell.
We want an Auckland that works.
We want an Auckland that's a great place to learn, to live, to work and to play. Those things are important. They're important to me as a lifelong Aucklander and with my family in Auckland, but they're actually also important to New Zealand. New Zealand cannot succeed unless Auckland succeeds. We're 50% of the country's growth. We're 35% of the country's population. We simply have to make this city work.
Vic Crone.
Yes. Same question?
Well, yeah. Why are you running for mayor?
Well, there's two things. One is I don't think Auckland's heading in the direction it should be. I think Auckland needs to have bigger aspirations for itself. And so I stand for an Auckland that's world class, that we are up there with the best in the world.
What does that mean?
That means that we're really smart, that we're going to be a smart city, just like many other cities around the world are already doing.
What does that mean?
I can't describe that in 20 seconds. So it basically means that we are not using technology in our city to enhance the way we are living. And many cities around the world are doing that. Number two means we're really inclusive, that we are compassionate with each other. And the fourth one is that we're seriously competitive on the world stage.
John Paulino.
Look, I moved here 21 years ago because I fell in love with Auckland, and I want to stay here. I don't want to have to move out of it, but the way it's going, it's really forcing people to move out. I have the plans and the policies. I look at it. It's not that complicated. We can fix the problems here, but fortunately, I've seen it overseas. I lived in Los Angeles. I've seen what doesn't work, and I lived in New York City, and I see what works and how we can actually move people around.
Mark Thomas.
I'm standing for mayor because I see the potential. I see the opportunities. I've been part of this council for 6 years. I've seen us not make the most of the huge opportunities we have. We don't make the most of the enormous amount of money that Auckland's give us. We don't prioritise and focus enough. We don't take actually enough responsibility. We're trying to be all things to all people, and guess what? We're not making enough progress on the things that matter most. And so I want to deliver a more affordable council. I want to deliver better transport, not in 20 years, but sooner. And I want to sort our growth out and deliver the affordable housing that we need. That's an Auckland that works, and that's why I'm standing to be your mayor.
Mark Thomas, thank you.
Hey, we should just comment on this area, the Britomart development. That's an example of good development in Auckland, where we kept our heritage and we made it an exciting place to live.
And there is Phil Goff demonstrating that when you've been in politics long enough, you know when things are coming to an end and you get in with the last word. So buggy you, Phil Goff. I'm the host of the show and I'm having it.
John, I actually put a...
Stop, no, wait.
But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more.
So we've just arrived at Britomart and the time is 8:29. What time did we leave Hobsonville?
7.
It's taken us 55 minutes,
Wow.
but my boss says, to get into town, which is not actually a bad run,
sadly.
Funnily enough. So they are 5 mayoral candidates for Auckland: Chloe Swarbrick, Phil Goff, Vic Crone, John Paulino, Mark Thomas. Thank you for being with us today. If you're listening on the radio, we will put this online. If you've just watched it and you want to watch it again, it will be up. Thanks to Claire, Brad, Pip, and Adrian, who have been our wonderful crew, and our driver, Mac. And thank you for giving a damn about Auckland politics. Wherever you live in the country, don't forget to vote.